Peter, you were invited to attend the Think 20, which was held last year ahead of the G20 this year. Tell us a little bit more about the Think 20 and what it aims to do.
Well, the aim is to generate high-level thinking, out-of-the-box thinking, over-the-horizon thinking, I suppose, about key issues either on the G20's agenda or that should be on the G20's agenda but aren't yet. So that's the purpose. The format hasn't been ideal up to now. It was just a one-day event, and it's a huge agenda, obviously. And I think the Australians will be putting a lot more emphasis on this in the build-up to their presidency, so there'll be a much more sustained interaction, not just a once-off. Papers will be commissioned. That didn't happen in Moscow. So I expect that this is something that will grow, but it's still off a relatively low base.
As we look towards the G20 Summit next month, many question the legitimacy and effectiveness of managing global economic issues through the G20. What is the root of this debate?
Well, fundamentally it has to do with power and authority. So the powerful countries essentially set the rules, and in a format like the G20, they do through a club format, and clubs are inherently closed. So those who are outside feel somewhat aggrieved and hence question its legitimacy. I would just say that if the G20 didn't exist, you would have to invent it. So you need to run the global economy in some form. Not everybody can be involved. You should try and be as open and transparent as possible, which I think the G20 is trying to do. But at the end of the day, you need forums like this to bring the key players around the table at key points to discuss key issues.
Your expertise is the multilateral trade system, and you have declared the Doha Development Round all but dead. What is the role of the G20 in resuscitating the Doha Agenda at the World Trade Organization, if it has a role at all?
I think there is, and one has to go back to the interwar periods to understand why, and the Great Depression particularly. So we don't have a lot of time, but basically the financial system and the trading system melted down in that period, and the one reinforced the other. So if we're talking global economic governance, you need to have a sustained dialogue about both the trading system and the financial system. At the moment, the G20 is really focused on the financial system and hasn't figured out how to intervene in the trading system. And that's partly because the member states are very divided, but also because there's another forum, which is the World Trade Organization, where, as you correctly say, I think that the Doha Round is all but dead effectively. The problem there is that the trade ministers manage the WTO, and trade ministers don't think like finance ministers, who are the core of the G20. And heads of state generally aren't tasked with managing trade policy. So in the G20, you really don't have the right people meeting, which is why in the World Economic Forum we called for the trade ministers to be formally brought together and constituted as a G20 group. And that first happened in the Mexico Summit and will happen again in Moscow. So it's a start.
So lastly, as we move closer to the G20 Summit, what are you expecting to emerge from the meeting?
The problem, I guess, is that it's being hosted by Russia, which is not a major economic power, and also has all sorts of geopolitical differences with the West. So President Obama will not be attending as a result. Now, because you don't have President Obama present, how much can the leaders decide? Key question without the US on board. So as a result, I don't expect much from the Russian G20 summit, but I do expect progress in more micro-level areas, if you like. And the interesting one to watch is tax reform. So there's been a lot of concern about big multinational companies shifting their profits around the world and not paying taxes. The OECD has just come up with a report designed to address that problem. The G20 finance ministers look set to adopt that report, and one can expect some regulatory changes across the G20 member states as a result. There will also be discussions on things like shadow banking, very arcane topics, macroeconomic convergence. I don't expect much there. They'll discuss trade, they won't agree on anything, and so we go. So it's really these smaller, less controversial issues where one can expect progress, I think.
Peter, thank you for talking to us.